Whilst firsts are not always happy occasions,
or that memorable, or in hindsight, that important.
Some firsts shape us.
Shape who we are.
The decisions we make.
And the relationships we have.
First is about all those moments.
The moments that stay with us.
And those that will eventually fade.
memories,
Friends.
Events. And times of tribulation.
Whether easy or difficult.
The first of something is so important.
You're here to share in our firsts.
Who knows what else this could start for you?
Mum had been in the hospital for a couple of days and Dad hadn't told me very much. I was sat watching cartoons when he came in and asked me to sit on the sofa. I knew that Mum was having a baby, but I wasn't crazy on the idea of having to share my parents or my toys or the spotlight. Dad came in and sat me on the sofa and asked if I remembered that we were having a new family member. I vividly recall rolling my eyes. Of course I remembered. I was dreading it. But he crouched down next to me and told me that I had a little brother, and he had the biggest smile that I have ever seen. I mean, I shrugged when he asked me if I wanted to meet him. Mum came in and she was holding a tiny little baby covered in blue blankets. It looked kind of strange that she didn't have her big belly anymore after watching her get bigger and bigger. She sat down next to me and I met my little brother for the first time. His face was all pink and scrunched up like he was angry, and he looked like a little alien, but kind of cute at the same time. Mum passed him to me and told me how to hold him, and she kept telling me to be gentle and careful, but he was really light, so I knew that I'd be fine. Well, she had the biggest smile on her face as well, and I know that having a little brother wasn't the best idea of what I wanted, but I couldn't help but smile with Mum and Dad. I had this weird feeling of closeness even though I just met him. Mum had ignored my suggestion of purple as a name, which I think was completely absurd, as he was my little brother and it was my favourite colour. But I look back now and realise that Luke was probably a better choice. He started to cry, so I shoved him back into Mum's arms, jumped down off the sofa, turned the volume on the TV up to drown him out. Mum and Dad took him out and left me to watch my cartoons. I mean, I could say that I was being childish, but I was a child, for God's sake. I love Luke. I mean, he did end up stealing some of the attention, and my toys, and he could be an annoying little shit at times, but I'll always look out for him. When he got picked on at school, when he cried when his first girlfriend dumped him, when he was struggling with his homework for GCSE, I look at him and I can't help but feel as protective as I did on the first day that I met him.
Oh, for God's sake. That's all I said. Oh, for God's sake. So, we were in geography, and everyone was talking, and I mean everyone. And it just so happens that I turned around to talk to Lauren, and Miss Lucas decides to call me out for talking. And so, I turned around, and in my moody 14-year-old sultry way, said, "What?" And then she went into this pointless, angry rant about how rude I was and how I was wasting everyone's time. One, no one cares about geography. Fact. So, I'm not wasting anyone's time, really. Two, you're the only one wasting time by having a go at me. And so, when she turned around, I mumbled, "Oh, for God's sake," which just set her off even more. The next thing you know, I'm being sent out of lesson with a pink detention slip for my use of bad language. I did not understand it. My first thought was, I had no idea Miss Lucas was such a Jesus freak. Turns out, she's not. She thought I'd said, "Oh, for fuck's sake." And even after arguing with her for like 20 minutes, she refused to believe that I'd only said God. And, I mean, I've been sent out of lessons a million times for being cheeky or whatever, but this time, it was too far. I do not get detentions. Well, sorry, I never used to get them. I got a few more before I left school, but not as stupid as that. I had to stay a few days later and write a letter of apology to the deaf bitch for my use of bad language. My first detention was for something that I didn't even say. Wish I fucking had now. But I did learn something from her detention. If you're going to be rude to a teacher, enunciate.
It's weird. I mean, most people just call it silly. But I can remember every detail of my first kiss. We'd walk home every day after school, and he would always go his way to make sure that I was never alone. And he'd always leave on the same corner, you know, the one on Belfield Road. And a few weeks before, he admitted he had feelings for me. It surprised me at first. It was the single most best thing I'd ever heard in my life. I mean, I secretly had hidden feelings for him since I met him in March. I bashfully told him and he just laughed. The fact that two best friends had both fallen for the other. Then on September the 25th, we were walking home and, I don't know, some unknown force in me just grabbed his arm and rested my head on his shoulder. I thought he was going to shout, but he just laughed. And it reminded me of a joke that we had since we told each other that the urge to act upon it was like a fish going for the bait of a fisherman, and that we should have because it fucked up the friendship and blah, blah, blah. We stopped on the corner and he turned round. We'd usually spend the next hour or so just talking, nothing weird, you know, just a normal friendly chat. But that night, he didn't say anything at all. He grabbed my arms, and he pushed me to the street side. It was perfect. I'm not going to go into detail, but he really is a great kisser. I don't know what to say as he sheepishly stood back. Bait is meant to be taken, he said. And I let out this horrible cringe-worthy giggle. We spent the next few minutes just smiling at each other. Then a fire truck goes by, lights blaring, drawing all attention away from the two boys wrapped in each other's arms. He kissed me again and strode away. Like I said, every detail.
Death was nothing new to me. When I was younger, my grandfather had died, and I was little, so I didn't really know him very well. And I was sad, but for my mum, not really for myself. I was too young to learn about death, they said. But when Jason died, that was the real lesson about death. That made me so much more aware of death. Jason was my best friend, and his funeral was the first one I ever went to. I remember waking up in the morning, turning the alarm off, not going to school. Felt weird. Normally when I did that, I would think about what to watch on the TV or play on the Xbox, or whether I'd go to Jason's and hang out with him. Felt strange turning up to his house and him not being there. His sister was unrecognisable from the crying. She huddled into every friend and family member that arrived. May, his mum, was frantically rushing around, getting everything ready for the wake, sorting out all these flowers. There were so many flowers, all these colours, every single one of them Jason would hate. He had this really bad hay fever, and he wouldn't be able to stop sneezing in his own home. Thinking of how he would react to it, it didn't make me happy, but it didn't make me sad either. We sat in silence as we went to the church. Thank God I was facing the other way. I couldn't have looked at his coffin the whole way there. And it wasn't that I didn't want to. Looking would have made it seem real. And I was still empty. Got there and I almost threw up. I hadn't eaten properly since it had happened. And I was holding my breath so much just to keep my odd, conflicted, neutral feelings of disbelief at bay. I must have looked sad. Everyone were coming up to me and tilting their heads at me. I sat at the front. Jason's sister came to hold my hand. I don't remember much of the service. There was prayers and hymns and people talking about how wonderful he was. What I remember is the priest. He was talking about compassion, about how Christ gave it all, something. All I could think about was how Jason would tell him to shut up. He knew nothing about him, what he laughed at, what he cared for, what kind of a person he was. Jason was compassionate. He was funny, he was friendly, and he was helpful, but only to the people he cared for. To others he seemed shy or quiet. And to me and his friends, he had one of the most confident voices you've ever heard. He'd be perfect at speaking at the funeral. And that's when I started crying. Not little tears down my cheek, but floods of them. Crying over my friend who I had lost. And I wouldn't let it diminish the memories that I had of him. His rants about Catholicism or his advice about how to clear my internet history. I was crying because of the things that he would never get to do. He would never speak at a funeral. He would never get his GCSE results. He would never get drunk with me at university. All those things that he secretly wanted to do, but he never told anybody. And there's nothing new I can learn about him anymore. And there's nothing new you can learn about me. Okay, so I've got the facts of his death and his funeral, but that's it. But I'm going to change. I have changed. But I wish he knew me now. And I wish that I knew him. And no matter what happens, there's going to be two things that just I remember him for. When I was 15 and I watched my best friend get hit by a car in the street and die. And the day when I went to his funeral and said goodbye to him. The day I went to my first funeral. The day that I stopped making memories with my best friend.
The first book I read was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Have you read it? It's really good. It's about this boy, and he wins a golden ticket, and I don't need that to win. Just watch the film. It's not the Johnny Depp one, the original. But yeah, with the book, I really enjoyed it. But I did have to look someone still, you know, like what was it? Scumdilly Bunches, I think. Anyway, the point is, I found it hard to go. But it wasn't just because of that. You see, let me explain. Like, most kids read their first book at, what, 6, 7? I read mine at 16. But it's not how I think, okay? It's not because I'm an idiot. I'm really clever. It's hard to tell. It's like, when I look at the words, you know, they get jumbled up on the page and I just don't understand what I'm looking at. Sorry. I don't normally tell people that I problems with reading. I mean, they make fun of me. I mean, my friends, God, they would just call me an idiot. They would laugh at me all the time. And the teachers, God, it would be even worse. They'll just coddle me endlessly. They say, oh, don't worry, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. We can take care of you. Well, guess what? I've been taking care of myself, okay? You know, and I will learn to read other stuff. It's just taking me longer than normal, okay? You know, I'll get onto Charles Dickens or Charlotte Ron, whatever her name is. Like, I'll get onto his books. It's just taking me longer than normal. I went to a library recently, and I told her about the book. But she was really proud of it. Okay, and it wasn't because I struggled. It's because I finished the book, you know. I still struggle with reading, but I enjoy it.
Like everyone has at some point, I'd made a promise that I would never drink again. It was absolute bollocks, of course, but I was serious at the time. I'd had the odd glass of wine with Sunday dinners before, but this time I was absolutely plastered. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, but it was on a crate of 12 WWKDs while I was at the park with my friends. I could barely stand up. I ended up spewing blue vomit all over the park and God knows what else I did. And I don't remember getting home. But the next morning, my dad found me lying in the garden. Who knows what could have happened, or what did happen. So I made that promise. Which, of course, I broke not long afterwards. But I did promise that I would never let myself get to that point again, where I was out of control and putting myself in danger. Now I've broken that promise too. Drinking is a lot of fun until it's not.
first Christmas dinner I ever cooked was a fucking disaster. I'd only been living in England for a few months at a time, and I couldn't afford to take the time to get off work. My ma was gutted, but I refused to let her pay for me travel. It was exhilarating, the thought of having Christmas on my own. My girlfriend was coming over with her big sister Claire, and I said I would cook. And I'm not a bad cook. I can prove it if I ever get a chance to cook beef Wellington for you. But this went wrong on epic proportions. I mistimed everything. The turkey was too dry. The potatoes were overcooked, and they just fell apart. And the stuffing, well, I'm not quite sure that ballsed up stuffing mix. Adding water and putting it in the oven, but I managed it. The sole thing that survived the kitchen apocalypse were these vile vegetarian pigs in blankets I bought from M&S for Claire. By the time they got over, there were pots and pans all over the kitchen, and I was hot, sweaty, and dishevelled. Sexy, right? Well, they both laughed at me and we ended up ordering Chinese food. Duck and pancakes is kind of like Christmas turkey, right? Well, fuck you, it's delicious. And that's what I want to do every Christmas. Not the travesty of cooking for more than myself. And not ordering Chinese food. I always get everything from M&S. Everything. This year, they even gave me a list of the timings of exactly when to put it in the oven or the microwave. The veggie pigs and blankets don't make an appearance though. Fuck you, Claire. They're shite, just like your stupid sister.
I was furious with myself. I'm so bloody careful when it comes to my pill. But lo and behold, there I was at 18, pregnant. I'd only just got to uni, and things were going to be hard enough with my boyfriend living that far away, and a baby was not going to be good for me. I slowly got used to the idea, though. I kept finding myself looking at baby clothes on Pinterest. I told my mum, and she assured me that money wouldn't be a problem. I even picked out a name for both genders. But it never got to that point. 4 days before my 12-week scan, I woke up bleeding. It was the worst pain I have ever felt. My first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. And what hurts more is that I didn't get to find out anything about the baby. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl. Just as I was getting used to the idea of being a mother, I wasn't. I wasn't a mum. I was just a very upset 18-year-old girl with a lot of Pinterest pages to unfollow.
I have quite a few tattoos, but my first one will always be my favourite. See, I knew I wanted one, but I didn't quite know what to get. And in that situation, I'm told you're supposed to go for a rose or a skull or an anchor. I'm not really the rose or skull type. And my dad's in the army, so he'd kill me if I got an anchor. So I went for the equally eye-rolling cliche of Chinese writing on my lower back. It hurt like a bitch, and I cried like a little bitch too. And apparently, it doesn't say determination like I wanted. It actually says insert here. But it didn't cost too much, and I love it even now. Plus, it reminds me of how much of a twat I was when I was 18, and it makes the one of Ugly Betty on my arm a little bit less stupid.
It's an absolutely awful joke. It's not even funny. Well, it is, but I heard it at a time when I should not have been laughing. It was 3 days after my mum's funeral. And I was looking on my Facebook page to look at all the messages from people saying they were there for me. Okay, Lisa, you used to call me names in school, but now you want me to know that you're there for me. Cool. Thanks. That's not the point, though. I saw it on a music page that I liked a while back. Doctor, doctor, I can't stop singing What's New Pussycat. It sounds like you have Tom Jones disease. Is it common? It's not unusual. Right? It's terrible, but I couldn't help it. I pissed myself laughing. I think I was laughing because I found it so funny. It was the sort of joke that if my mum had heard it, she'd call me up from work. She loved puns. After I'd finished chuckling, I realised that I hadn't laughed in days. I was horrified. I should not have been laughing. Mum had just died. But the more I thought about it, thought about that joke and thought about my mum, the more I realised she wouldn't want it that way, me not finding happiness in anything. I had to learn to laugh. For me, for my dad, for my mum's sense of humour. Laughter is good, even if it is a truly awful Tom Jones puns.
For the first 6 months of his life, all I saw of my son were photographs. I'm ashamed to say that I took the coward's way out, and I walked out on my girlfriend when she told me she was pregnant. I don't have any excuses. I was scared, I was stupid, so stupid that I didn't wear a jolly when I was drunk. I mean, I just wasn't the kind of guy to bring a kid up. I always remember people talking about when the kid was born, and I missed that. It was May 9th when I met my little boy. One day, I'm just watching One Born Every Minute, just like trying to procrastinate for some exam revision. And I think to myself how much of a dick I've been. I think of all the stuff I've missed out on, of all I'm missing out on, and all I've deprived Connor of. So I decided to contact one of Michaela's friends on Facebook. Now, I have been silent for 14 months, not spoken to her. I've moved away 120 miles for uni, so you can only imagine the response I get. Luckily for me, she gave me a number. Michaela gave me the same exact response. I just sat there and took it. There's nothing I could say. She deserved it. There's no excuse I could have made to justify my absence. She had no reason to, but she agreed to let me come and meet them. She made it crystal clear that this meant that there was no way that we'd ever be getting back together, but she invited me over. So, after my exams, I got the train down. And all of a sudden, all that prep I'd done, the exams, my grades, uni, it didn't matter. All I cared about was seeing my little boy standing outside her house, it just felt surreal. I've been there 100 times before when we were together. When I finally summoned the courage to knock on the door, it was a mum that came out. She swung it open, but arm right across the entrance. Well, the silence was unbearable. I broke it. Hiya, Kim. She obviously kicked off. What makes you think you can be that casual? She started swearing, pointing until Michaela came down and told her, "It's alright, I've already told him off, he's here to make it better." I went inside and I gave Michaela the most awkward, most uncomfortable hug anyone has ever given anyone. I just felt so tense. And then Kim came down with my son in her hands, and I just felt relaxed. I stretched out my arms even though she said he'd probably cry because I'm a stranger. But he didn't. He just looked at me. He had Michaela's eyes. This bright blue, just gorgeous, and his hair, jet black, sprouting curls just like mine had. And I just smiled. I had no words. I just smiled and laughed that this was my little boy. I just think of how stupid I've been. I've stopped thinking about that. The point is, I came to my senses and I'm making things better. I held my little boy. I clutched him closer, just breathed in and out. He wouldn't speak, so I finally spoke to him. "Hello, Connor. I'm your daddy. I know I've been rubbish so far, but I'm here to make things right, okay? And as long as your mummy lets me, I'm going to spend as much time as I can with you. I promise." He stopped me talking by burping and spitting out some white sick all over my chest. Michaela was on the floor crying. Even Kim cracked a smile. I mean, it's not the movie moment I pictured in my head, but standing there in the hall, covered in sick, in my eyes, that was getting off easy.
Depression is like drowning. You're in the water and you're kicking and waving your arms, kicking your legs, but you're still sinking. You can't concentrate on anything except all this water. All this water that's crashing over your head and pulling you down. And you try and stay above the water, you kick, you try and breathe, but you're not getting anywhere. And you start to sink. Next to you, there's loads of people in a boat. They're telling you, just swim. Just stay above the water. Just swim. And you try. You're kicking and waving your arms and you try and breathe, but you can't. There's another boat as well. In that boat, they're telling you, don't worry. You can't swim yet, but if you keep trying, one day you'll get it and you'll learn how to swim. They mean well, but they just don't get it. If I don't learn how to swim now, then I won't need to in future because I'm drowning now. I'm drowning! The first time I caught myself, it was after school one day. I'd stolen a pair of scissors from Art and I cut 3 deep lines into my right arm. It hurt. I bled, but not a lot. And I cried. Because telling people in a boat that I couldn't swim was almost impossible. But they seem to notice when you're bleeding, an actual wound that stops you from trying to swim. I carried on for a while, until one day, someone threw me a ring on a rope that I couldn't cut. And slowly, they helped me get into the boat. But there are still people out there drowning. Still people trying to bleed, to drown quicker, or to get the real attention from the people in the boats.